that trying to minimize or eliminate our electric portfolio's impact on climate is a good goal. But in order to be achievable while minimizing costs and maximizing reliability, you really need to have as much flexibility as possible. You need to have all sort of the tools on the table. And that would speak toward a clean portfolio, and that would be consistent with trying to approach the climate issue if that's really what this is about. The more you can constrain that, in other words, it doesn't have to just be clean, it has to be renewable, or it has to be small renewable, or new renewable, or in-state, or the more constrained you make it, the more you're going to introduce the risks of increased costs and also potentially reliability issues without making a difference in the climate goals. So I think, the concern about that is the more you do that, then the focus really seems to be less, this is a climate policy, and more, this is a policy that, yes, has positive climate impacts, but it also is benefiting a smaller and smaller group of interests in terms of developers or whatnot, and technologies and whatnot, without regard to whether that makes a difference in terms of meeting the climate goal. In fact, if anything, the more constrained you make it, it's more expensive or more challenging to meet those climate goals, as opposed to having greater flexibility. And we fundamentally oppose that kind of approach because we think the focus should be on maximizing the climate impact with reasonable costs and reliability. But if that's not what this is going to be about, if this is going to be a portfolio that is intentionally designed to benefit specific technologies or scales of development or whatnot, then I think we should be open about that, put that on the table and debate the merits of that.
What I see is similar to what William said earlier. As we break down into tiers and say, well, only certain resources qualify here or there, we're actually picking winners and losers. And we're diverting money to certain technologies and certain people. And that makes it more expensive and harder to manage and significantly more overhead for the utilities to meet our compliance and the regulators to make sure we're meeting our compliance. So if our goal is to be 100% clean and deal with climate issues, I still struggle to understand why we need to break down into multiple tiers and pick solar versus wind versus hydro. There's a tendency in Vermont and in the legislature for command and control. Like, we have to tell people what to do or they're not going to do it. And I think we do a disservice to the ratepayers when we dive into the weeds and try to get very specific in how we define things, versus relying to some degree on the market. And as Chase said, the prices on renewables are coming down. It's comparable. It's actually an economic decision now to do the right thing. It's not a regulatory requirement. I question how much command and control we really need versus simplifying this conversation and getting to the meat of what are we trying to accomplish. And if it's climate change mitigation and greenhouse gas reduction, then let's talk about the resources that qualify for that and let the utilities figure it out.
Ken, so I appreciate your remarks, and I just want to check in on the current RES. Is the current RES a command and control piece of legislation, or is it creating a target and utilities choose their own path?
So I would say tier 1 is much more choose your own path. Their tier 2 is very specific, right? It has to be less than 5 megawatts, connected to the distribution system, built after 2015. If I'm GMP, that's probably not onerous because I have a huge territory. If I'm Orleans or Hyde Park in Brian's case, that's a pretty high bar. And it drives you to make certain decisions and work with certain people. And I don't know that it brings any additional benefit to the climate conversation.